Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Barbara Weaver-Smith. Barbara, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here on Keep Hustling. I love to hustle. Been hustling my whole life.
We are definitely going to jump into that because I just reading your bio and I say in almost every episode, the way that this show is run and the way that this show should be run is everyone should read the bios first because I don't want to bore people with them. But this is a bio. Barbara's bio, love that, is one that you need to read because her career path and trajectory, not only what she's doing now, but what she's done in the past is awesome. So everybody should listen to that. But that's a great segue. Take us right into your earliest hustle. I'm going to ask the question differently than I usually do. You said you've been hustling your whole life. Your earliest time that you remember hustling.
Oh, gee. Well, early, I guess when I was about 12, I started babysitting. I've always wanted to have my own money. I'm the oldest of what turned out to be 7 girls. We weren't all ever at home at the same time, but I'm the oldest of 7. And so I spent a lot of time, taking care of my younger sisters. My dad was a salesman. He always wanted us to grow up and be salesmen. We say, Daddy, we want to be a teacher. We want to be a nurse. And here I turn out to be a salesperson. But anyway, I started working when I was young. I've always had a job, various kinds of jobs because I like to work and I like to have money. So
did you hustle your siblings? I got to hear about this. 7 girls? First of all,
I don't know.
Props to your father.
I did rule the roost, that's for sure. Yeah.
I'm blessed to have 4 daughters and 1 son. My son is in the middle, there. So, yeah. But I have no sisters. So what's interesting is when you grow up, my mother is amazing and is the ultimate mom's mom, boy's mom, I should say. Yeah. So when you grow up with a boy's mom and you marry someone, my wife has no brothers, and her mother and father are the ultimate like girl dad and girl mom. So. It's a lot of adjustments, but 7 sisters. Yeah. That's a lot of hustle. I hope you got them to do your chores at least.
Well, sure. We all had chores. Absolutely. I mean, that's when I was growing up, we had chores. It was a much more traditional time. I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, by the way, close to you.
Yes. Yeah. Northeast, not quite New York, but we'll take it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
We will take it. So I want to just pivot for a second because your career path has taken what I would view to be an unexpected turn, and that is from the education track. And I'm going to ask you about that because you did the way when we discuss hustling and moving through and getting through difficult times or challenging times or maximizing someone's life and career. Starting as a professor and ending up as a dean is something I want to ask you about. But then you pivoted to entrepreneurship and being a business owner. So first and foremost, what was it like in the educational system going from being what we'll call an employee to rising through the ranks to being a senior member of the faculty or the administration?
Yeah, well, I started out, I was a non-traditional student. I was already married and had a couple of kids by the time I finished my undergraduate. I thought I would be a high school English teacher. And I wasn't able to professionalize my degree because I didn't have the opportunity to do student teaching while I had 2 little kids. So I just did a degree in English and history. And fortunately for me, I did that degree in Anderson, Indiana at a college called Anderson University. And they invited me the semester, the fall after I graduated, they invited me to come in and teach a couple of writing classes because they were short on people. So I did that. That was my first career motivation change. And I really loved the college teaching. And then I knew I had to earn a master's and a PhD if I was going to do that seriously. So that led me on a long path of more education while I was working over quite a few years. That's how I got into higher ed. That wasn't my original plan at all.
So I just want to be clear as to the insanely awesome, incredible hustler that we're talking to right now. Not only did you complete an undergraduate degree with 2 children,
Yeah.
I presume that your children you didn't just snap your fingers and they disappeared from your house for a while
No,
and they
they
automatically
were
started taking care of
around.
themselves.
Yeah.
And then you got 2 more degrees,
Yeah, I
a
did.
master's and a PhD.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much coffee did you and do you consume on the average day?
Well, I don't do any coffee anymore, but during those years, I drank a lot of coffee.
So
Yeah,
just
it
an
was.
IV drip of caffeine to get through.
Yeah, it was tough, but it was also inspiring. I loved going to school. I was very good at school, and so that part was good. And I was able to work to teach part time for several years, until they were pretty well launched into school where they could come home by themselves or something. So it was very, very fortunate for me. And I went to Ball State University, which was not too far from where I lived. And I did almost all my work at night, except for the last year. I did a year in residence. So I did a full-time year. And, a lot of people have asked me, how did you manage to do that for all those years? Because it was a lot of years to do that. And I just always thought, I'm going to be the same age, in 10 years, and I'm going to either have a degree or I'm not going to have a degree. And so the time frame didn't really matter. And I think there were a lot of advantages to doing my graduate work while I was already teaching and I was an older person. I see that as a huge advantage, not a disadvantage.
Yeah, but how many people, or how did you dig deep to get to actually doing that? Meaning, it is true. It is a fact that regardless of what we do, 10 years from now, we are going to be 10 years earlier, whether we get a degree, whether we work, whether we retire. If we are blessed to still be on this earth, then we will be 10 years earlier. But most people, I have to believe, would say, yeah, so therefore, I have 2 little kids at home.
Yeah.
Or maybe, by the way, I did the undergraduate thing with 2 kids. Great. Props to me. I did it. I have this degree, which I always wanted to get. That's it. Even though I have aspirations or I have dreams or desires to want to take this to another level, how did you do it? What pushed you through that?
I don't know where that comes from. I decided that I really loved teaching in college. Okay. And in order to, I could have kept doing that part-time as an adjunct faculty member or stuff or whatever. And I found there's such a thing in any career as a ticket to ride. It's like if you're going to be a university professor, you have to have a PhD. That's your ticket, So if you don't have it, you're an underling. And it makes people angry and frustrated for their whole career if they don't do that. So I didn't want to do that person. I'm a very ambitious person. I didn't want to do that and not have the credentials. So there was no question to me that that's what I was going to do. No question at all. Because I did not want to be second class.
I hope that people internalize that message, because I feel, and one of the things that I'm learning from the privilege that I have in hosting this podcast is that the most successful people and the people that I'm privileged to interact with are the people who actually said that. Mm-hmm. So many people feel it, they think about it, and they let that thought be a fleeting thought, and they don't internalize that. And the most success, I feel, comes from the people who say, I'm just going to take that one further step. I'm not going to accept that, again, within reason, right? I could say that I want to be an astronaut and then I have asthma, so therefore I can't be an astronaut, right? That's that. But if a person has a goal, and I believe that most people, their true goals can be achieved. And if your true goals can be achieved, the only thing standing in the way of you achieving them is you. Exactly. Nothing's can happen along the way. But I think it is so profound that you said, I refuse to accept being that second-class citizen, for lack of a better term, or being that person who wasn't for your own choice, right? Again, things can happen, things can come up, tragedies, But I just, I think it's so inspirational that you said that you weren't going to accept anything other than what was within your control. So then you continued and you became professor, went through being a professor, became the dean.
Yeah.
And then you thought of this crazy idea of, hey, maybe college education shouldn't be my last career stop.
Yeah, I kind of hit a plateau. I was the dean of what they called the university college, which was the college for all the freshmen and all the non-traditional students and student athletes and people who got extra support. It was it was a big learning center and an advising center and a place where students could come and have help figuring out their career goals and thus their major and minor, things like that. So it was a new program. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of building to it, putting it together, and all that part was fun. And then it was kind of done, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do forever because there were a lot of constraints kind of on what I could do, and there was no room for me professionally to grow at that university. I was, place bound because I had a family, lived with my family. We weren't going to move for a job for me. So I didn't see any future there. And this opportunity came up for me to become the head of a statewide nonprofit organization in Indiana called the Indiana Humanities Council. And so I jumped in.
But then you ended up with a business that has, I'll call it a business education business, meaning you're educating.
Absolutely.
You're no longer educating college students, but you're educating business people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I've always been in that teacher role, but from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think I've always been an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur when I was in higher ed because I was always starting. I built a learning center. I started a couple new projects, and then I got to be the dean of a almost brand new enterprise. So it was very much building a system, and teaching and training people at the same time. So I think that's been consistent all along. I didn't know it at the time, when I was doing it. But as I look back, I can see that progression of what I was always looking for, making an impact, I like to do stuff. I like to plan things, I like to make things happen. I don't like to sit around with the status quo when I see things that I believe could be better. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I love that. I want to get back to your current career or what you're doing now, and your book. But I want to ask you about the pivotal moment. Usually, I ask people to tell me or tell us the most difficult moment in their career. So I want to ask you that, and then I have a follow-up. What has been the most pivotal, do you think, or difficult moment in your career to date?
I would say in my third career, when I had my business, and I took on a business partner in like 2006, and that partnership went south very badly. And that was a hard thing. I wound up buying the entire company to get out of that partnership, which I really couldn't afford to do at the time. And I wasn't sure if I knew enough to do what we were doing by myself. So it was very frightening. It was financially, very risky. Could have been disastrous financially. So
I believe that moment goes back to your entire story of hustle, because
probably,
you also could have said, this partnership is not working, therefore the business is not viable. Therefore, I'm going to take the easier road.
Yeah.
And the easier road probably would have been to not be the purchaser, but either be the seller or fold the business. But yet, you decided not to do that, which I think gets back to...
it's important to say I had tremendous support from my husband, who's my business partner, but doesn't work in that business at all. He was, he's retired now, but he was a faculty member and department leader and, leader type person in higher ed.
Did you meet on the job?
Yeah, we did. Although when I first met him, I was married to someone else. We didn't have our whole career together, but we've been together 30 years now. So yeah.
My parents met in the insurance industry also. So
yeah. So that's how I met him. So he's, he was really very willing, encouraged me to go out on that limb to invest the money. To him, that was a no-brainer. That it's going to be your business partner. That was. So if I hadn't had that support, that would be a different story.
And what can you take us to the moment where you decided that you were going to leave higher education? Because I think that's fascinating. That here you said you reached the plateau, and I think that very often those plateaus that people reach.
And it was also, I thought there was a place where I was badly treated by my
sorry about
department.
that.
I went up for promotion when it should have been right for me to be promoted, and I discussed it with the department chair ahead of time, and all was good. And then when the news came out, I wasn't promoted, which I wouldn't have even gone up for promotion then if I thought they wouldn't support it. So it was just bad news. And then I went in to talk to them about why I didn't get promoted. And this is an amazing story. You'll find it hard to believe, but they said, well, you know that you're evaluated in 3 ways: by teaching, service, and research. And you need to be equal across all those ways. And so you're an A+ teaching, and you're an A+ in service, but you're an A in research. I said, I can't believe you're saying that. You really need to rethink what you're saying to me. And
isn't the job of a teacher to teach?
They stuck with that, and I had to fight it. I fought it. I fought it really hard, and I won, and I got my promotion, and then I left. I just had very bad feelings about it after.
But then you picked up and decided to pivot your career.
Mm-hmm.
How did you pick up the pieces after that disappointing turn of events?
I already had the other opportunity sitting there because I was on the board of that organization, and it just happened. There was an opportunity. So they didn't have any downtime. It wasn't that hard a decision.
Love that. So now I have to ask you the business question.
Yeah.
And that is your business, the Whale Hunters, the book, Whale Hunting, How to Land Big Sales and Transform Your Company. Everybody wants to land whales. And I think that one of the things, and anybody who tells you that they don't or doesn't want to land the biggest customers is a liar. And I can say that with all the confidence in the world, or they're scared. But there's still nobody in the right mind says, you know what, I'd like the smaller client today.
Yeah.
I think as it relates to the topic at hand, to hustling, is that so many people sell themselves short and say, that person would never want to work with me, or I'll never be able to bring that person into the fold. Mm-hmm. And so without giving away too many of the secrets, and your contact information is obviously in the show notes, and everyone should contact you who wants more information. But how do the most successful people that you work with hustle through that doubt and change that mindset?
I don't know how other people do it, but let me tell you how I do it, because this is something I teach the people who want to be whale hunters. You have to learn to think of yourself as a peer to the people to whom you're selling. Now, when I came from the academic world into the business world, I didn't have any business credentials. I had academic credentials, but I had a PhD, which people admire. Business people that degree actually has been more helpful to me outside of higher ed than inside, because as you said, people recognize that it represents an investment in yourself, investment of time, energy, and money. So there's some respect for it. So I had wonderful parents who made me feel very self-confident. But I always look for, how can I be a peer to this person, which is not to be fussy about it, but just I have a right to be in the room. I guess that's the point. I feel like there's not a room that I don't have a right to be in if I prepare myself to be in it, and if I have something to offer. So I always think about, if I'm nervous about things or taking on things other people are too, I'm not different from everybody else. So I always I have a a podcast and an article about not being a minnow in a sea of whales. And I have this story when my little boy came home from kindergarten at 5 years old. He was crying. He was all upset because some sixth graders had come in to their class and tormented them while the teacher was out. And he said, came home, I'm never going to sixth grade. Because here he thought he's going to be a 5-year-old in the sixth grade. He didn't realize he's going to grow up. So the same thing with feeling like you're a minnow in a sea of whales. You have to convince yourself that you can be a whale. You can deal with the whale. And you have different gifts to bring to it.
But how does one then handle the imposter syndrome?
Well, I don't know. I think it's how do you learn to believe in yourself? If you have some successes, I know it's especially common among professional women to talk about lack of confidence and fear. And I have never suffered from it. And I definitely, two things. One is being the oldest child. And two is having parents that just thought you walked on water. I mean, I had the greatest parents ever. And I never, ever felt, that I wasn't worthy of something. I don't know. So I have not had that problem.
It's incredible that you say that, because one of the I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I don't remember which one it was, and there was a comment that one of the people made that one of the challenges in our generation is that, and I'm not saying that the way that 2 generations ago did it was 100% correct, but the inability for parents to instill in their children genuine self-confidence. And I would venture to say that when you did something wrong, your parents told you that it was wrong.
Oh yeah,
But yet you were still the champ, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I think that people who, I think that children especially eventually figure out that their parents are just constantly telling them that they're perfect. And if a person is constantly being told that they're perfect, they realize that they're not perfect. And therefore, when things happen that are not, that show that, or show them in that light, they're unable to escape that. Whereas, as you said, you're the greatest parents in the world. In your view, I'll challenge you with mine, but that's okay. We'll agree to disagree on that.
Yeah.
But yet, you were able to make all these changes and evolutions in your life and in your career, and never once have you said in this time that we've spoken, in any of those challenges, that you lost that confidence. And that's incredible, because that was literally put in your, injected into your veins.
Yeah, I think that's true. My parents they were very able to say out loud, I really hate what you're doing, but I love you. They could always separate the behavior from the person, which I think is so critically important.
Was it not Gandhi who said, hate the sin, not the sinner?
Yeah, exactly.
So not that you were sinning. That's not my point, but I just mean that the action and not the person.
Yeah.
So do you find that the difference between the people who are able to really excel and take that, because I imagine that the people who are able to connect with the whales, their career trajectory and their ability to earn income and business growth, things like that, goes from 0 to 60, meaning it is not linear growth, it's exponential growth. Do you think that most people sell themselves short?
I don't know about most people. I know the people that I work with, I'm always working with an entrepreneur. Usually an entrepreneur. I start working in a company with the person who's running the company, which in my clientele, that's usually an owner. So that's an owner, founder, big stake in this company. And it's a successful company, but they've reached a plateau where they can't go to the next level on revenue and growth until they go after bigger customers. So they know what they want to do. They just don't know how to do it. And so where there's a good leader and the executive team gets on board, all of the rest of it is learnable.
Interesting.
Now, usually there will be 1 or 2 people in the company that really don't want to do this. They don't want to learn it. I think it's stupid, We call
But
them
aren't those the people that end up capping their growth?
Yeah, exactly. And so there might be people who have to deliver these services, and they're pushing whales off the beach because they're already busy. So
Pushing whales off the beach.
all this cultural stuff has to take part in it because it changes the game for the whole company and has to be a collaboration of all the people. But it's not. It's a matter of learning process and methodology primarily. It's a new way of thinking, but if you start doing it, you start thinking differently about it too.
I love that. And I love that line. How many people push whales off the beach and immediately regret it, by the way? In hindsight, someone's like, man, the whale was right there. They're on my beach.
Yeah, exactly.
And I pushed them off.
So
wow,
that
Barbara.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The people in the company that we're working with, they have to all start thinking that they're whale hunters. It's not just the sales team. The whole company has to do things differently in order to be able to land and then properly serve a really big customer, because you can screw up on the operations side very badly if you're not prepared to do that. So, we use the metaphor of the Inuit people who hunted whales, and they hunted whales because they could feed their village for a year. So that's the metaphor. You hunt whales because you feed your village for a year, and everybody in the village is part of it. Everybody has a role, and all the roles are equally important. So it's a very different way for a company to believe that if people buy into that and give it a try, it's exhilarating. It's exhilarating because it works. And the more it works, the better they get at it. So I believe it's all learnable.
100%. And I encourage everyone to check out your book. And I haven't finished it, but we'll get there. We have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite inspirational quote and what it means to them. So thank you again for being here.
My pleasure.
This has been inspiring to me. Your journey is one that's truly inspirational. And with that, the floor is yours.
Well, my favorite quote, I don't know if I can quote it exactly, but it's about the biggest difference you can make in your life is how you use your time.
How you use your time and hunting the right people and keeping your eyes on the right prize. And what I've learned from you is never accepting to be second fiddle.
There you go.
So this has been another episode of Keep Hustling with Barbara Weaver-Smith. Thank you again, Barbara, for being here. Remember, do well by doing good and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.